as the information ecosystem expanded beyond the mainstream media, the establishment understood that they can no longer control narratives the way they could with the media itself, because it was all spilling onto social media, it was all spilling online, and where they just couldn't get a handle on it. So this became a way for them to reassert some modicum of control over information online, what gets considered to be truthful, accurate, and what's considered to be misinformation and disinformation.
Journalist Ashley Rindsberg has spent years reporting on what he calls the Wikipedia crisis, as the website moves away from being just an online encyclopedia.
The new mission becomes becoming a social justice movement. They call it becoming a global influencer in knowledge.
Right.
And this was explicitly, very openly bound up with DEI.
Ashley tells us how bias and inaccuracy on Wikipedia can pollute the world's information.
So whatever gets put onto that Wikipedia article is what you get shown on Google. Now we're talking about billions of people accessing Wikipedia information. It's used in Alexa and Siri when you ask a question.
Right.
It's pulled from Wikipedia. So the influence is enormous.
He explains how events of global importance can be propagandized by anonymous editors.
All we have to do is create a little fleck of doubt, a little bit, just stir the pot so we don't know what the ingredients are anymore in it. And by calling COVID lab leak a conspiracy theory, or by calling the grooming gangs a moral panic in the Wikipedia article, quite prominently in the article, that's exactly what you're doing.
Welcome to British Thought Leaders. I'm Lee Hall. Today I'm sitting down with Ashley Rindsberg, journalist and editor of MPOV Substack. Ashley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lee.
You've been writing for years about Wikipedia. A few people have some concerns about it, but you've been writing about a Wikipedia crisis. Can you expand on that for us?
Yeah, Wikipedia is something that in our minds as internet consumers, internet users, just kind of this like nifty little cute little thing from the early 2000s that was crowdsourced and neutral and very like innovative in this way. In reality, it's an extremely important part of what Wikipedia itself calls knowledge infrastructure. They call it actually the global knowledge infrastructure.
Right.
It's how they control the flow of information, particularly online, and it's a critical piece of that, deliberately so. The reason they did this is because as the information ecosystem expanded beyond the mainstream media, the establishment understood that they can no longer control narratives the way they could with the media itself, because it was all spilling onto social media, it was all spilling online, and where they just couldn't get a handle on it. So this became a way for them to reassert some modicum of control over information online, what gets considered to be truthful, accurate, and what's considered to be misinformation and disinformation. And finally, there would be now a mechanism that could determine which way a piece of information would fall.
How popular is Wikipedia, and what would the average person's view be in terms of trust?
It's still extremely popular. It's I don't know exactly the number of visits they get, but I imagine it's no less than the tens of millions, probably in the hundreds of millions of visitors to the website every month. But that's actually not where the influence lies. The influence lies in the fact that Wikipedia is now used to train every major AI model.
Really?
It's used for Google. If you do a Google search, I recently did for the topic of free speech. And the entire Google page that you get, the majority of the content, or at least the plurality of it, is drawn directly from Wikipedia. So whatever gets put onto that Wikipedia article is what you get shown on Google. Now we're talking about billions of people accessing Wikipedia information. It's used in Alexa and Siri when you ask a question.
Right.
It's pulled from Wikipedia. So the influence is enormous. And this actually gives a huge amount of power to a tiny number of editors who understand how to manipulate the system behind the scenes
Right.
to their advantage.
You talked a bit about that editing process and the impact it has.
The editing process, again, the sort of the marketing, the messaging from Wikipedia is that anybody can do this. That's not true. Anyone can technically sign up for the website, or you don't even have to sign up. You can use your IP address to edit. You're, as a newbie editor, the chances of your edits actually sticking and having some impact on the final version of an entry are close to zero.
Right.
You're going to be outmaneuvered. You're going to be bullied. You're going to be subject to these sort of parliamentary maneuvers that Wikipedia editors, and these are people with hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of experience doing this kind of edit warring to make sure that their viewpoint on a given topic is the one that remains on an entry. You will be completely dominated by these people, and so will 99% of other people. It's not just me and you who would not manage to pass this test.
No.
It's most people. We don't have the time, we don't have the energy, we don't have the knowledge, but a tiny clique of experienced veteran editors really do. And we don't know who they are. They're totally anonymous.
Right.
They could be great people with the best of intentions, and I think the majority of Wikipedia editors are, but that leaves a lot of room for propagandists, for people acting in bad faith, people who are attacking other people anonymously on Wikipedia, sort of defaming them. This is all stuff we know happens on Wikipedia every day on the most sensitive topics.
So how would you describe Wikipedia's worldview, and do you think it's changed over time?
I think it has stayed relatively stable over time. The worldview, I would actually defer the description to Larry Sanger, who's the co-founder of Wikipedia. He recently had this series of essays he put out called the 9 Theses. So it's like kind of an echo of the 95 Theses of Martin Luther, which he nailed to the proverbial door of Wikipedia in late September. The way Larry describes the worldview is GASP, and that's global, academic, secular, and progressive.
Right.
And that is 100% accurate. Again, there's always going to be some kind of divergence. There is going to be some diversity in the margins. But the predominant worldview of Wikipedia, which is also sort of institutionalized into Wikipedia policies, is the GASP worldview.
So we're saying if that's what's feeding into these language learning machines and AI, etc., it will also have those values, and any kind of wrong information will also be coming through as well.
Yeah, it will sort of absorb the worldview itself, and this is something that there's a machine learning researcher named David Rosado in New Zealand who's done some really good research on Wikipedia itself, showing that there is a clear political bias on topics ranging from U.S. Politicians to journalists to even Supreme Court justices to global leaders around the world, that people on the right are associated with more negative sentiment in terms of the language used, and people on the left are associated with more positive sentiment. But Rosado has also done really great research showing that some of the AI biases that we were told we should expect, which would be biased against minorities, are actually not true.
Right.
And that the bias that we're starting to see in some areas of AI is bias against white male, because these machines are reading Wikipedia, they're reading New York Times, they're reading NGOs, they're reading the UN, and you're not going to find a bias against minorities and women from those sources. You're going to actually find some kind of latent bias against the opposite. So this does percolate down. It also percolates directly through on the topic level. So if you ask AI about a question, ChatGPT in this case, you can see that it pulls directly from a Wikipedia article, gives you that answer from the Wikipedia article, and cites the Wikipedia article directly.
So can you give us some examples of articles that you think have had particular bias or particularly interesting in this regard?
The big one, the 800-pound gorilla, is Donald Trump. I've done a lot of reporting on how Wikipedia editors stood up this kind of narrative that Trump is a fascist, and this was done in the weeks and literal days before the 2024 election. So what they did is they don't just say it in a single article and make a passing reference. They wouldn't do the trick. They create a network of articles that are interlocking. They link to each other. So this is the article on Donald Trump, the article on so-called Trumpism, the article called fascism in North America, another article called Democratic Backsliding in the United States. And in all of these articles, the same editors are making the same claims, sometimes using verbatim language and the same exact sources to state that Trump is a fascist. When the media started to evolve this narrative and say, oh, no, he's not just a fascist, because that got a little bit tired, he's an authoritarian.
Right.
Then they did the same thing more recently. Same network of articles, in some cases the same actual articles, the same messaging to bring out this idea that he is a fascist. And in one case, they really leaned heavily on a single article in The Guardian. And this article was sponsored by George Soros's Open Society Foundations. And it cites a Harvard professor who's an expert on fascism, who is an advisor for a think tank run by an former Obama appointee. So there's a political interference, there's a political influence in the way the information is formulated, but you don't see any of that on the surface of the Wikipedia article. You don't see all the stuff that goes into the article, you just see the flat claim, Trump is a fascist. And as far as you know as a user, that might as well be true.
So would you say that Wikipedia has had a tangible impact on the flow of US politics?
I think so, and it was particularly because it became the source of ground truth on the internet. This was something really deliberate. It was something that was engineered around 2016, which is when Hillary Clinton declared a fake news epidemic after losing the election. And at that same time, Wikipedia was transformed by its leadership and a number of Hillary Clinton political operatives who joined this effort, and made into this source of ground truth where you could say, okay, Wikipedia says it's not true, so when we go to like the Twitter committee or the Facebook committee that's allowing us to say this post is okay, that post is not okay, remove this, keep this, and then referring back to the Wikipedia information, so you're actually affecting the discourse in a direct way, in a direct manner. So I think it's had a tangible effect. It also has an effect on just general consciousness. Like when people go and they say, I don't really know what to think about a given issue. Yeah. I know CNN is going to go this way, and I know Fox is going to go that way. Let me go check out Wikipedia. And it looks neutral. Its interface feels neutral. It feels almost like transparent, like there's nothing there, like glass. But it's not that. And when you go and you see, oh, Donald Trump is a fascist, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize he's a fascist. Or when you see the COVID lab leak theory, that the virus might have come from a lab in China, then that it's being called a conspiracy theory dozens of times in numerous articles, and you think, oh my God, I had previously thought this was possible, but Wikipedia is saying that to believe this, I have to be a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not that, so I'm going to throw this away, and we're not going to go down that road. And it accumulates. There's a public belief that accumulates, and there's a public pressure that rises upward. And think when a congressman thinks maybe we're going to investigate it, but his constituents are saying, don't be a conspiracy theorist. Wikipedia says you are one if you think this. Then again, you're affecting policy in an indirect way from the ground up.
We've got members of the House of Lords, Matt Ridley, talking about that. And so to describe them as a conspiracy theorist is a bit unbelievable, really.
Yeah, and Matt has been one of the great leaders on this issue, and I actually interviewed him on an NPOV regarding Wikipedia, because if you are saying COVID lab leak theory is a conspiracy theory, and to explore it you must be a conspiracy theorist, then you have a great author like Matt Ridley who's being indirectly defamed and smeared by association. Yeah. And the research that Matt and Alina Chan did for their book on this topic, and the research that he's continued to do, both of them have continued to do, is world class. And yet Wikipedia, some random editor behind the scenes who we don't know the identity of and we don't know the motivation of, is making the very opposite claim.
So I know you've talked a bit about this. They prefer secondary sources almost to the primary sources. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, this is a Wikipedia policy, long-standing policy, where they rely on media reporting on an issue. But it's not just any media reporting. It's not that all media outlets are created equal in the eyes of Wikipedia. It's exactly the opposite.
Right.
So there is a list of reliable sources. It's called reliable sources on Wikipedia, and it's color-coded: green, yellow, red, and gray. Green is for generally reliable, red is for generally unreliable, yellow is for sometimes reliable, and gray is never reliable.
Right.
And it just so happens that the entire cadre of the mainstream media, this the New York Times, the BBC, the Guardian, et cetera, are green. No matter how far to the left they might shift, they will be green, and that sometimes goes as far as like actual far left news outlets, including Jacobin, which until very recently was green, is now yellow. On the right, that's not true. I would say predominantly news outlets in the United States on the right are either red or yellow. That's Fox News, that's Washington Times and Examiner and others in that group, which are red. China Daily, which is a state propaganda organ for the CCP, is yellow.
Really?
It is considered more trustworthy than an American conservative news outlet that has an editorial structure and is subject to the laws of the United States. It's considered more trustworthy than that. Al Jazeera, which is controlled by the Qatari state, is green. So again, you can see the biases emerge when you start to look at these things.
So do you think Wikipedia is kind of vulnerable to state-sponsored propaganda, or are there safeguards in place for that?
There are no safeguards in place aside from whatever few editors or administrators happen to be active in a given article or topic. There is no oversight. Wikimedia Foundation, which owns and oversees Wikipedia, has no, it says it doesn't get involved in these types of things, but that actually doesn't fully do it justice to to its inability to actually investigate. It doesn't have investigative tools to understand what's going on. Whenever there's been a major report on malfeasance, corruption, undue influence on Wikipedia, it's come from users, user-generated data. It's never come from Wikipedia or Wikimedia Foundation itself. So I would think that if you are a paid propagandist in whatever country, could be China or Egypt or wherever, and you are not paying attention to what's going on in Wikipedia, and you are not having your teams work on the most important source of information online, you wouldn't be doing your job. You would be fired. So do we have direct evidence that this is going on? We don't, but we do have patterns of editing which are suspiciously in line with the prerogatives of state propaganda for a given number of countries.
Was there a bit of a situation with the grooming gangs articles on Wikipedia?
The grooming gangs article at some point was retitled to be called something having to do with a moral panic, meaning the onus was not on the people who were committing these crimes, but on the public that's concerned about it. And there's still mention of this term, moral panic, in the article on the grooming gangs. What this does is it puts a little seed of doubt in the mind of the reader to say, oh, wait a second, okay, maybe this is an anti-Muslim moral panic, and maybe it's not so simple. Maybe it's not what we thought it to be. And again, that's good propaganda, because good propaganda is never out there trying to convince you of the absolute truth of the claim of the propagandist, because that's too hard, it's too high a bar. They just want to create a little bit of doubt. Just like COVID lab leak. We don't have to convince you totally that it had to have come from an animal. We can't. We don't have the animal. All we have to do is create a little fleck of doubt, a little bit, just stir the pot so we don't know what the ingredients are anymore in it. And by calling COVID lab leak a conspiracy theory, or by calling the grooming gangs a moral panic in the Wikipedia article, quite prominently in the article, that's exactly what you're doing. When you go and you look at the sources they use to make that claim that it's a moral panic, these are openly Marxist academic journals, and there's only about 3 sources. 2 of them overlap. It's the same authors.
Right.
And this is what's made this incredibly weighty and I would say brazen claim that the pattern of an epidemic of rape in this country of young girls, children, is a moral panic. That to me seems insane.
Yeah. One of the issues that gets a lot of kind of to and fro in the mainstream media is Israel-Palestine. Is it the same with Wikipedia?
That is, I would say, the hottest flashpoint on Wikipedia at the moment. One of the big investigations I did personally in October of 2024 was into this Gang of 40, as I called them. This is about 36 plus editors who either align with Hamas messaging on topics or are staunchly pro-Palestinian or just plain old anti-Israel,
right,
working together in coordination to edit to make 1 million edits to about 10,000 articles in that space. And this was ranging from wholesale removing mentions of Iranian human rights abuses to removing mentions of terror attacks by Hamas and Hezbollah to trying to sever ties between Israel and the Jewish people from articles. And this is a persistent effort over years, executed in a I would say, operationally sophisticated fashion, working in 2s and 3s and small cells so they kind of fly under the radar. They don't get caught by admins. Mm-hmm. And this is still continuing. Jimmy Wales, the co-founder of Wikipedia, he jumped into the fray on the Gaza genocide article, because the Gaza genocide article states in what they call WikiVoice, which is Wikipedia's own perspective, meaning not saying according to experts, but they're stating it as fact the way you would say the sky is blue. They're saying what is a genocide in Gaza. And that doesn't reflect the full view, the full range of opinions and views on this topic. Mm. Jimmy Wales gets involved saying, this is egregious, we can't do this. And the site erupted. And it was so contentious that he had dared to voice a countervailing opinion to the predominant opinion on this topic on Wikipedia that they've now referred Jimmy Wales, the co-founder of Wikipedia, to be topic banned, to be disciplined by Wikipedia itself.
Wow. You've written about the industry of paid editing for Wikipedia. Can you talk us through that?
That is a massive industry. I was able to track at least, I would say, 200 agencies that do this in a illicit fashion, meaning they're breaking the rules and the terms of service of the site. You're not allowed to do editing on behalf of somebody else if you're taking money. It's a conflict of interest. There's a whole separate category of agencies that do what they call white hat editing, which is they declare that there's a conflict of interest. They say, we represent this company, can you make this and this change? My understanding is that the white hat firms charge on the order of tens of thousands of dollars per month for this, and their clients include everyone from Pfizer to major media news organizations. The New York Times has hired these firms, NBC and Vox, Department of Defense has hired them. So we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of articles that have been modified by paid agencies and paid editors, and it's really well known on Wikipedia, and I think they try to combat it, but there's just no way that they can stem that massive tide of paid editing because there's such huge interest. And the reason for that is because when you search something in Google on a given topic or a given person, almost invariably the first result you're going to get is a Wikipedia entry.
Definitely, yeah.
And that real estate, that online real estate in the search results is worth billions and billions of dollars. But Google and Wikipedia have this very tight relationship that Google deliberately gives Wikipedia that ranking. In exchange, Google gets free, quote-unquote, verified content from Wikipedia to sell as high-value search results that it can use to sell ads.
I saw the Wikimedia Foundation launched a legal challenge against the British government over the Online Safety Act.
Yes.
Why did that happen? Can you help us understand that?
According to the terms of the Online Safety Act, Wikipedia is and should be considered to be a very large online platform. And as such, it's supposed to comply with a certain number of regulations, including the need to verify user identities, I believe in certain cases. This, for Wikipedia, is sort of, it is almost a devastating blow to the site. The need to verify editors would mean to know their identities.
Right, the anonymous editors.
The anonymous editors. Right. Wikipedia, for better or for worse, runs on anonymity. And without that anonymity, I think most of the editing in any given jurisdiction would completely dry up. Editors would be exposed, content would have a sort of a different, there would be a different approach to content creation on Wikipedia, and they're deathly afraid of what this ruling might mean. It remains to be seen how this is actually going to play out, if they're going to comply, or if they're going to remove themselves from British jurisdiction by simply not operating here. I'm not even sure that's possible, though, because someone could simply access Wikipedia on British soil, and that would require Wikipedia sort of blocking itself from British users. So
plus all the appearances in Google.
All the appearances in Google. This is a major, major problem for Wikipedia. No one is really talking about this with the level of seriousness that it deserves, because it is crisis level challenge for Wikipedia to try to deal with this.
I wanted to ask you about the Online Safety Act, and you're an expert on these issues. A lot of people are against it, saying it's taking away our freedoms. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I generally fall on the side of less regulation when it comes to anything having to do with information and speech, personally. I think where we're thinking about safety and well-being of children, that it changes things a little bit, because what we're seeing today, as anyone out there who has kids, or anyone that is close to family members with kids, one of the things you worry most about is what they're getting exposed to online. And I think there is a place for appropriate regulation to protect children on the internet. But I also think that a lot of these regulations can be used as a power grab to control information. So the government is sort of trying to do what Wikipedia was involved with in 2016, 17, 18, where certain topics become forbidden.
Yeah.
You can't say this. And if you do say this, you lose your account. And as today we're seeing in the UK, you might get arrested. So that to me is a very worrying trend. I think it chills not just speech, it chills expression, it chills your liberties as a person in a democracy.
Looking at the money side of all of this, I often get these requests from Wikipedia, and they kind of sound like they're about to run out of money, and like, can you save us? I mean, do you think that is actually the case, or is it just fundraising techniques?
It's an amazing fundraising technique, because when you see those banners on the articles, you immediately feel the sort of heartstrings being tugged.
Yes. Oh no, Wikipedia!
I want to help you before the servers crash and the whole thing goes blank and dark. And they don't even have, like other charities, you have a picture of like a hungry child that really gets you. They don't even have the picture. They just have this amazing text. The reality is that Wikipedia is got to be, by this point, one of the wealthiest nonprofit organizations in the U.S. It's U.S.-based. I think by now they probably have something like $400 million of assets on hand. That includes an endowment that was established in 2016, as well as assets that belong to the organization, Wikimedia Foundation. They run on a budget of around $180 million per year, which is hard to understand what they do with that much money every year. Their server costs and their sort of baseline infrastructure costs are nowhere near that.
And there's a lot of volunteers, isn't there?
There are a lot of volunteers on the content side, on the technical side, on the product side, as they call it. These are paid professionals, but still they have around 400 engineers and product specialists, which to me, I'm not an expert, I've never run a company or organization of that size, but that sounds like a lot of people. So they're bringing in around close to $200 million per year. They're bringing in more than they spend, and they also have a lot of cash on hand. They have no chance of ever running out of money.
Right.
But I think that actually the bigger point here is that they are sending millions of dollars through to other organizations that they make grants to.
All right.
And a lot of these are politically, they're activist organizations, they're sort of in the woke space that they're funding. So this is where things get really dicey, because some of the money that's being raised through these banners with the urgent appeals is actually just being sent to an organization that has nothing to do with Wikipedia.
What impact has George Soros and his charitable foundations had on the fortunes of Wikipedia?
They've had a huge impact. Soros, again, this is all around the same time period in 2016, 2017, where Wikipedia undergoes this transformation. They call it the movement strategy. This is something that was designed, it was very deliberate, it was very careful and very sophisticated. At that time, where they shift from their mission being building an online encyclopedia, that was Wikipedia's traditional mission, the new mission becomes becoming a social justice movement. They call it becoming a global influencer in knowledge.
Right.
And this was explicitly, very openly bound up with DEI. They embraced DEI, they funded DEI to the tune of millions. At that time, where they undergo the shift, a whole phalanx of executives, operatives from George Soros's gigantic universe of NGOs comes over to Wikipedia and takes senior roles there. And that includes at the time, the executive director and CEO, Catherine Maher, is now the CEO of NPR. She is a George Soros acolyte. She is, going back to her very earliest positions in working in the NGO space, has committed herself to the ideals of the open society, which is Soros's famous political philosophy. And this also extends to everyone from Wikimedia Foundation's general counsel, its chief fundraiser, its revenue officer, chief revenue officer, the person in charge of the endowment that has raised $120 million. These are all Soros people. And they all came in at the same time that Wikipedia was making the shift.
So if people don't want to use Wikipedia, are there much competition? What's out there?
There are alternative encyclopedias. There's one called Justipedia, a veteran editor who was really battling in the American politics space because she felt that there was a bias, a strong left-wing bias, which there is and there was, went out and created her own online encyclopedia called Justipedia,
right,
which is excellent. And then, of course, we recently had Elon Musk just smashing into the space, as Musk does, with the launch of Grokipedia. And Grokipedia is a little bit different, or a lot different, because primarily the content is AI generated. It's still being built. He's launched it as version 0.1. So he's not at 1.0 yet.
Right.
And he's saying when they get to 1.0, it'll be 10 times better and 100 times better than Wikipedia. Maybe true. But the real point is now we have a serious, credible alternative to the Wikipedia for the first time in the history of the internet. We've never had that. For 20-some years since Wikipedia was founded, we have relied on one dominant source of online information, and that's Wikipedia. Now, Grokipedia has obliterated that monopoly. So this is the dawn of something very different.
So we would assume Elon Musk has taken measures to make sure the information from Wikipedia hasn't come into the language machines and then be affecting Grokipedia.
I think what they've done is they have taken a lot of content from Wikipedia as sort of the basis for the articles, but then they are reformulating it according to whatever the weights that they use in the AI. So this is something that we don't know much about. We don't know how Grokipedia is run or by whom or according to what principles or protocols. Hopefully we will know more. But if you do side-by-side comparisons of articles on the same topic from Wikipedia and Grokipedia, like for example on COVID lab leak, you find that the Grokipedia, at least from my read, it was like a breath of fresh air, because you're not being choked by this heavy-handed viewpoint as you are in Wikipedia. In Grokipedia, it states this is a theory, and this is what it says, and there's no mention of the notion that it's a conspiracy theory. It's just a theory. And it's a theory that has been validated by certain parts of the American government. And the people who called it a conspiracy theory are people with conflicts of interest. This is what you learn from Wikipedia, which you would never learn from Wikipedia. So at least there's an alternative view. And you, as a consumer of the information, now can make a choice. And that's the most important thing.
In terms of its aim, I mean, the original aim of Wikipedia was quite noble, really, to provide information to everyone.
Yeah.
It's just the ideology, would you say, that's taking it off track, really?
Yeah, I think whenever you have an institution as powerful as Wikipedia is, there will always be an attempt by somebody to capture it. And there was in this case, and they captured it, partly because their most natural constituency in Wikipedia in terms of the editors are people who sort of tend in that direction. They're academics, they come from that milieu, that cultural environment that tends towards the left, and that's what you get. So I think, this is where we are now. I hope now that there is more sunlight on this issue, that people will, at least the culture on Wikipedia will start to shift a little bit. And if it doesn't, then again, at least we now have a different version of the online encyclopedia to draw from.
So finally, say we're historians and we're logging what's happened here and giving lessons to the future. I mean, what do you think are the key things we need to learn from this Wikipedia crisis?
That's a great question. I would think that you need to learn to be extremely careful when we're dealing with information and knowledge. Part of what happened with Wikipedia, and the reason it became so successful, is that its growth was completely vertical.
Right.
Once they launched, and they initially launched a different version of Wikipedia called Newpedia, and it was had this very rigorous editorial process. An article had to go through these committees and editors and had to be really fact-checked, and it was very rigorous, and it took forever to get a single article done, and it was expensive to do it. It was not practical. The moment they turned it into a wiki, which means a website anybody can edit, it exploded in popularity, and that was great. It was amazing. It told a great story. It was so exciting that Bono from U2 descended on Wikipedia hoping that he could invest in it. So I'm not sure if he didn't understand it was an NGO, but everyone wanted a piece of it because it was exploding in growth, and it was going so fast and getting so big, and everyone loves success. But the problem is that you have to balance that against the principles underlying the thing that you're trying to do. And I'm not sure that they were able to do that to the degree that it required. Something so important and so big. I think success got the better of Wikipedia. And when that happens, again, with any institution, when any institution gets too much powerful, gets too successful too quickly, we see that it tends to get corrupted. And as noble as the mission of Wikipedia is, and as amazing as the story of Wikipedia is, we have to keep in mind that that was always going to be a threat, and it was never properly addressed. And I think that's what historians might look back and say, this is what happened, and it can always happen. We're human beings. This is how we work, and we always need to be cognizant of that fact.
Ashley Rindsberg, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Lee.